All right, Jeff. Well, I just learned that all this time I've been pronouncing your last name incorrectly. So
This is extremely common. Mispronouncing it is
What do you
neck
get?
and neck with misspelling it.
what do you get as options for your last name?
I get Rougvie. I
Yep.
get oh my god! I mean, so many. But it looks like it's French, but all my relatives that I knew were from Scotland. So over there,
Oh.
it's like Rougvie. It's like
Rougvie,
really
yeah.
hard. But it turns out I did trace the genealogy back, and it does go back to France.
Okay.
So
Yep.
it's some sort of mashup of red life,
Yeah.
basically.
You're some European mutt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm one of them too. I know how it is. How long have you lived in Salem?
30 years as of
Oh, wow.
last September. Yeah, I'm as shocked as you are.
Where'd you come from originally?
I grew up on the South Shore
Okay.
in South Weymouth, and then my folks got divorced, and I bounced to Hartford, and then that was so boring that I dropped out of art school and moved out to Minneapolis to at the time try to get a job with Prince, who I had been obsessed with for about 5 years. And
How does one go about getting a job with Prince?
well,
Or trying to, at least.
yeah, so I didn't really try that hard. I had another job that took me out there, and I knew people who worked for him. And
Okay.
based on the stories, I'm really glad that I didn't get a job working with him.
Okay.
So, yeah, people just got suddenly terminated for doing helpful things.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but mercurial geniuses, I guess, have that option.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if your name from birth is Prince, you've basically been handed that attitude, probably.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
starting from a place of, considering yourself kind of entitled, I guess. Prince, it's not king.
Yeah, close.
Not
Working
far.
toward it. Someone's got to die first. So I know you, so I know a little bit of your history. But was that going and trying to work for Prince? Was that your entree into the music industry? Is that how you started, or?
No, I started doing all the stuff that you used to do when there was an infrastructure for that, which was I worked at a record store.
Yep.
A really great record store in Hartford. It was the only good thing in Hartford, really. And it was a tiny little store, smaller than this, and the mix of product was punk rock, prog stuff. And also audiophile. So it was a really weird combination. But
I know what that means, but what does that mean when you say there was audiophile stuff there? Like, was it equipment or was it
no? So
recordings?
So the audiophile aspect of it was that their American records at that time sounded horrible.
Okay.
They were made of reground vinyl, and they really sounded bad. And even a lot of the European stuff, which had been really good for a long time, was starting to sound really bad. So a couple of specialty labels started, Bowl Fidelity. They did real high-end pressings. And then we discovered that pressings in Japan were super amazing. And we started bringing in tons of stuff from Japan.
Yeah.
And the guy that we were buying that stuff from brought the first CD player into the country.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And we bought one from him, and no exaggeration, that was 83, we got the player. And you could only get discs from Japan and Germany at that point.
Yeah.
Holland, maybe. I don't know. I can't. There was some
Phillips, yeah.
But they weren't available in the States yet. And we plugged that thing in, figured out the manual, which was all in Japanese, and we had these amazing KEF speakers. And as soon as we put I think it was Back in Black in, we were like, oh, this is going to change everything.
Oh, wow.
And so we started selling tons of CDs to early adopters, and probably we're selling and no exaggeration, out of this one store, probably 20% of all the CDs in America. We had
So this was a destination record store.
Yeah. We had a guy who lived in New Jersey who, was very close to New York City, who would fly his plane into Hartford and come to the store to buy stuff because we had a better selection than he could get in New York.
Yeah.
So that was like a good early education for me. And then when I moved out to Minneapolis, I went to work for the guy who we were buying all these import CDs from.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of came preloaded with a lot of knowledge of like what was in print on CD and what wasn't, and what countries you could get things from. And he and I opened a whole chain of record stores, or not record stores, CD-only stores. There's one in Boston. Actually, there are two in Boston.
Was it Digits?
No, it was the first ones were opened in Minneapolis, and he came up with the name, which I didn't get until years later. It was called CD Establishment, as in CD Establishment.
CD
like
Establishment.
A dive bar.
Got it.
I did not get it until like 2 years after we'd been opened.
That's funny.
And there was two in Boston and one in San Francisco, and those were called BCD, Boston Compact Disc.
Huh.
One was in Harvard Square. That was kind of like the sexy one where like Peter Wolf and Joe Perry would come and shop for CDs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the start of it. And then after I'd been there for like, I don't know, a couple of months, we just opened the first store. I think it was like November of 1984. He'd moved the distribution business into the basement, and he came running up the stairs, and he's like, "Here's the first CD on my new label. Let's stick it on the wall." And I had no idea about what this label was or that he was doing it.
Huh.
That was just my first introduction to it.
Yeah. And that label was?
Rykodisc.
There we go.
Yeah.
So when you opened the CD Establishment in Harvard Square, the BCD, is that what? Did you come back here to run that store? Is that how you returned?
No. So I came back out here for like a week and a half or something to help the store get set up. And I remember it vividly because it was the weekend of Live Aid.
Okay.
And I couldn't watch it because I was too
bummer.
busy. The store opened that Saturday. But it was a weird thing because records that you couldn't sell at all on vinyl, like the ABBA catalog, where you could sell tons of them on CD.
Because everyone was rebuying.
Everybody was rebuying
their collections.
And, so I had to sit with the store manager and say, like, here's what we need to bring in. And he was like, "Are you
ABBA?
high? Like, why are we bringing in ABBA?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Trust me." And they all sold out the first day. You know? That's just how crazy it got so fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So again, you and I know one another. So let's talk about Rykodisc a little bit. So it started out of a basement in Minneapolis.
Well,
ish.
So it actually started out of two places.
Okay.
Three, maybe. So there was a guy out in L.A., Chatsworth, who was a Japanese importer-exporter guy. And his job was to try to find us pressing because there were only a few plants on the planet at the time, and most of them were in Japan.
That made CDs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Don Rose, who was from Salem, he worked out of his house at first, and then Rob Simons, the guy I went to work for, worked out of his office for the distribution company that he had, which was a CD-only distribution company and some Japanese vinyl at that point, but mostly CDs.
Yeah, yeah.
So there were offices spread out all over the place, which actually was really good for partner relations.
Sure, yeah.
Because they all had their own little fiefdom kind of.
Yeah. You had East Coast, West Coast, and the middle of the country covered.
Yeah. And, a good national perspective because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was at a time when music was very regional almost. I mean, it was almost down to the state. There were artists that, weren't known elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, like when I got to Minneapolis, I was aware of the suburbs, but like the suburbs could play 5 nights at First Avenue and they'd come to Boston and, 12 people would show up.
Yeah, the Middle East downstairs. Yeah.
If they were lucky.
Yeah. Upstairs probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the founding owners of one of the founders of Ryko and Ryko Disc was from Salem. So is that how a record label, an international record label, ended up headquartered out of Salem?
Yeah. So the first address on all of the early releases was actually his home address.
Too funny.
And then he'd been trying to reach out to people who owned their catalogs for a long time.
Okay.
Artists,
you mean? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like the Grateful Dead owned chunks of their catalog. Frank Zappa, owned all of his catalog
Okay.
through various lawsuits.
Because usually the record label owned the catalog and
and we had this idea that you could bifurcate the rights. So in other words, we were hoping to be able to go to the major labels and say, hey, you guys don't believe this CD thing's going to happen, which they didn't.
Okay.
So can we license some records from you? And
interesting.
there were some people who bought into that, but it was not really the ultimate route. So Don was managing this band Rubber Rodeo from Providence, and they had made a short form music video. They got nominated for a Grammy in 1984. And Don's been calling Zappa forever, but he goes out to LA for the Grammys, and they lost to David Bowie, ironically. But Don had some time to kill the next day, and he dialed Frank's number, and Frank answered and said, come on over.
Yeah.
And Frank, being a technologically forward guy, had already started digitizing all of his masters and cleaning them up for CD, which was, pretty forward looking at that point. And he brought Don into the studio in the basement, sat him right in the chair in the center console, and played him all the stuff. And we ended up doing this deal with Frank for his whole catalog. We could pick and choose, and he had some, input too, but it was basically for the whole catalog as it existed at that point.
So the origin story of Ryko Disc was record labels were so caught up in vinyl and cassettes at the time, they weren't even considering CDs. So Ryko just did an end run around the record labels straight to the artist, and that more or less started with Zappa.
Yeah,
Zappa was the first big fish.
It was the first big fish, and and that's pretty true. I mean, when the first CDs were available in America, Sony, who was one of the co-developers of the format, right, had the only way you could buy them was a box of 7 CDs, and it was a jazz title, a classical title, all that kind of stuff, but maybe a Billy Joel and Michael Jackson Thriller. But you couldn't buy Michael Jackson Thriller by itself. So you'd buy the 7 CDs, you'd sell Thriller.
Yeah.
And then,
keep the other 6.
Yeah, the other 6. Yeah. And that wasn't direct to consumer. That was to retailers.
Okay. So you had to stock all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they only saw it as a format for like classical
nerds.
Yeah, they thought it was going to be the classical guys. That's why, CDs were designed to play like 72 to 74 minutes long, which is the length of Beethoven's Ninth.
Okay.
Typically.
Okay.
And they thought, like some of these audiophile guys, the people I was talking about before, who were just really into sound, would spend, a fortune on preamps and speakers, and then try to blow them up. And be really happy if they could blow them up, so they could then go buy more.
Yeah.
So that's what they thought the audience was, and we were like, no, everyone's going to want this.
All right, so let's rewind 30 years then. When you got to Salem, did you relocate here to work specifically for Ryko?
Yes. Yeah. So they hired me full-time, in the mid to latter part of the 80s, and it just kept getting bigger. The Zappa stuff was huge. Then we got a Hendrix title.
Run down the list of those early artists that that Ryko collaborated with. You said Zappa.
Yep.
ABBA.
Zappa was a big one. I think early on we had Jerry Garcia, Old Man the Way, which was a pretty big deal.
Okay.
We kept knocking on the Dead's door, but it was hard to get in. But all
Yeah.
these little side projects came along. So
Okay.
Mickey Hart had this whole series of world music
Planet
stuff.
Drum stuff.
Planet Drum, yeah, all that, which, turned into like a much bigger thing. Then the Zappa stuff got the attention of the Hendrix estate, and they had a, kind of falling out with Warner's at that point, and had gotten a release to go somewhere else. And they had Live at Winterland, which they had 4 nights of him playing Live at Winterland on multi-track, and they assembled it into what was, kind of the ideal concert from those tapes.
Wow.
And designed it specifically for CD, and it sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And that was huge. We sold like 250,000 of those, and the previous Hendrix titles had sold in the low, tens of thousands.
Sure.
So that was a big deal, and we started signing artists, and then the big fish, which a lot of people know us for, was getting the Bowie catalog, which was a year and a half negotiation, and it was shocking to us that we got it.
Yeah.
Because
this is a record label that only made CDs, that was based out of Salem. Am I getting that right? I mean,
yeah. So
you had offices, but
so there were offices in other places, but the Salem office was kind of like the creative hub. Eventually another partner came on, was business affairs lawyer guy, and he was down in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But
the address on the discs was Salem.
Yeah.
Signed a deal with David Bowie.
Yep, which was just nuts.
Yeah.
No one thought we would get it. But a lot of people don't remember, and it's good. He's done a good job of, and his estate's done a good job of kind of not reminding people of what kind of shape his career was at that point.
True. Early 80s were.
Yeah, he'd started out the 80s with Let's Dance, which was like
huge.
A huge record.
Yeah.
Although arguably not a very good record. It's great singles, but
Yeah.
not a great record beginning to end. And then he made Tonight,
which nobody liked.
Which everybody hates, except for maybe Blue Jean and some people who really reach like Loving the Alien. And and then he made, oh my God, what was the one with Day In, Day Out? Never Let Me Down.
Yeah.
Which, was supposed to be like a stripped down rock album like Ziggy Stardust, and turned into like a nightmare, not only for the listener, but also for him.
Yeah.
Like he hated it.
Yeah.
And like the first time I met him, he talked about, he had done this world tour where he played every song from that record, I think except one, every night, super choreographed. And he was like a restless, creative guy.
Yeah.
So this was his nightmare. Right?
Yeah.
Like
nobody wants this.
Nobody wants this. He didn't want that. But, he got to the end of it, and they had, during the course of the show, this spider set, the glass spider gets constructed around him. And they ended up having to make 2 of them because they didn't realize that the first one they made was too big to go into, coliseums. They had
to make a mini spider.
They had to make a mini spider, yeah. And I think the tour ended in like New Zealand, and they took one of the spiders out into a field and they lit it on fire and just sat and watched it burn. And he described that as a very cathartic experience.
Yeah.
But so he was coming off that record, and then about to launch Tin Machine, which was also not understood or appreciated.
Yeah.
And so,
he needed a win.
He needed a win. And, he was at that very real sort of precarious point where, you might end up being one of those artists who plays the state fair.
Right.
Which is, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but like if you were living at that moment, his records were in the cut-up bins, it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So he needed to do something to kind of reestablish who he was.
So did repressing all of those old albums onto CD, what did that do for his career?
Well, it reminded everybody, what he'd done. And we were lucky because a lot of that catalog had been pressed on CD, but only very briefly because RCA had the rights, but only for like a year of the existence of the CD. So by the time we got the rights in '89, there was this whole CD market, which was dying to find these things. And even the vinyl and cassettes were all gone out of print. You had to get them from used stores.
Wow.
So we went back with the idea that we were going to do a better mastering job, make them sound better. And not only that, but we were going to add lots of extra tracks from his catalog, because that was part of the pitch always with Ryko was, yes, it's a CD-only company, but when we do something with the CD, we're going to try to do as much as we can.
We had 30 more minutes of space than you had on a vinyl record, so let's fill it with stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we had done a Mission to Burma compilation when all of their stuff was out of print. And it was an 80-minute CD, which they had figured out a way to kind of use some of the surface towards the center of the disc. And some players wouldn't play it, but most did. And the ad was, 80-minute CD, who effing cares, and it was, because the point was that it was about the music. But yeah, so that was always the thing. Like, let's do the stuff that the major labels aren't doing.
Yeah.
Which was, looking at catalog like the same way the guys who opened the CD store looked at it. They were like, who wants this old ABBA record, and why should we do anything to spiff it up?
Yeah.
So they were just dumping stuff out and, sometimes at mid price, which at that point was probably like, $14.
Yeah.
And we made a deal with David that we would never, midline the stuff unless it was with his approval. So he was very excited about that because it meant his royalties were higher and all that.
Yeah.
And he was a willing participant in like going through his archives and pulling things out for us to add. So,
that's two incredibly prolific artists that you guys partnered with between Zappa and Bowie. So, I mean, they were just deep minds in both of those that you could dig through, let alone all the other artists that you signed.
Right.
That was an almost endless well of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and certainly with Frank, because, for the last few, years of his life, like the last decade, he would spend all his money going out on tour and he'd record every show and then he'd come back and he'd, hammer all those things into new records.
Wow.
So yeah, he was really like that. Bowie was, especially through the 70s, like pretty prolific up to a point. And then he started just really refining it. And there weren't like a lot of outtakes and stuff, but we still figured out ways to put extra tracks on almost everything.
Yeah. So that was 30 years ago. How long did Ryko last?
Ryko made it to, there were many deaths of Ryko discs, let's say.
That is the music industry, isn't
yes. So the office in Salem, the office in Minneapolis closed earlier because that was primarily distribution and finance. And the guy who was running it, Rob, was just like, I didn't get into the music business to do distribution and finance.
Yeah.
And so he was like, I'm getting out. So he jumped ship around 96, 97, I guess. And then I'd already moved out here. And about 98, we were in a world of hurt. Like, I think we had 1 year where, all the big stores like Tower and Best Buy, who were just buying in like tons of stuff and stocking everything, decided we're done doing that. We're just going to do the hits and, some catalog, but not much. And that year we had more returns than we did shipments. And we'd just done a finance deal to buy the Zappa catalog, which we purchased from the family. So we had a bunch of debt, and then not enough stuff.
And all your product gets sent back to you.
In. Yeah. Oof. And 97 was also the year the Bowie license ended. So that was probably paying everybody's salaries, and that was gone in a month. So in 98, they sold it to Chris Blackwell, who had started Island Records.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Chris was he was out of control. He had a bunch of money from a bunch of investors, and he had this was kind of his revenge because he'd had to sell Island. Polygram made a huge offer, and apparently U2 owned a considerable portion of Island in place of getting royalties.
Yeah.
He had given them more and more chunks of the business.
Huh.
So the U2's manager, when he heard about the sale, I don't know if he did this literally, but figuratively, grabbed Chris and dragged him in by the scruff of the neck and was like, sign this paper.
Yeah.
So this was supposed to be Chris Blackwell's revenge, starting this multimedia company that Rykodisc was going to be part of. And it became very clear that not only did he not really have a business plan, but that he was burning through money and that it wasn't going to last.
Yeah.
But I left at that point. In 99, I left. A bunch of people got offers to move to New York, and I was like, I wouldn't move across the street for Chris. I don't think this is doomed.
Yeah.
And it was. So
I've heard the stories from a couple different people of the closing of the Rykodisc offices, which were in Shetland Park. Is that right?
At that point, they were. They originally were on Pickering Wharf.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in 95, I think they moved over to Shetland. Yeah.
And it was the short version of the story that I've heard is, hey, come into this office, this warehouse, whatever, grab a bag and take whatever you want.
That was probably true. I don't know if I ever heard it expressed like that, but everybody was taking a lot of stuff, because nobody really knew what was next.
Yeah. And that was like right at the cusp of Napster. So the whole music industry was on the verge of collapse anyway.
Yeah, it was getting slapped around pretty bad. And I just remember like those big giant dumpsters that they haul up, those long ones. And they were just full of like Elvis Costello promo CDs and, but
hurts my heart, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's a drag, and it hurts my heart because like I was carrying as much out there as I could, but so much stuff got trashed and that. But the weird thing is, when Chris failed, the bank took it back. They considered it the asset that was worth money.
Sure.
And then I came back in 2003. There was a small office, believe it or not, up in Gloucester for those like 3 or 4 years. And they fired everybody except one guy who lived in Beverly, who was the head of sales. And he and I had a meeting, and we were like, well, should we reopen in Salem or Beverly? Because I lived in Salem, he lived in Beverly.
Yeah.
And we were sick of all the restaurants in Salem at that time. So we thought, let's just do Beverly.
Let's do Beverly.
Yeah, so we eat something different.
We can go to Ann Mall for lunch, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that opened while we were over there, actually.
That's funny.
But, we had a great space, and it was a lot of fun. The new people were just like, put stuff out. So I got to do a lot of things that I just felt like would be fun projects.
Yeah.
And that was a great time.
Yeah.
And then we sold it to Warner Brothers in 2006.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they kept it going until like 2012. I don't know why. They didn't need it.
Yeah.
It didn't fit into their system at all.
Yeah.
But
It was very, Ryko was very boutique. I mean, the green CD cases, weren't there like gold discs or something weird? There was some kind of weird type of CD that Ryko made. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you're right about that. So Mobile Fidelity, in their transition from vinyl to CD, decided that to make their CDs cool and different from other people's, that they would press them on with gold instead of aluminum between the plastic.
Yeah.
And the theory there was that gold doesn't rust, right? So if you're making a CD, the aluminum in the middle is just a reflective material, and it reads the pits that are in the plastic.
Right.
But if there's a little tiny hole in there,
Yeah.
then it'll rot out and your CD might skip. Now, that's pretty rare, but it happens.
Yeah.
Happens all the time with CDRs because they're not, made at the same specs. But so anyway, they did gold discs, and when the sales guy from Beverly, Thomas Enright, came in, he had worked for Mobile Fidelity. And he was like, why aren't you guys doing gold discs?
Huh.
You're supposed to be an audiophile label. And a new mastering process had come on at that point that was a higher bit rate. So we remastered a bunch of existing titles and put them out as gold CDs.
Re-recorded, like again and again and again. Like,
which, go to Walmart and there's, Queen's Greatest Hits on exclusive red vinyl to Walmart.
How weird is that records are back? Having worked for a company who, spearheaded the CD movement, how do you feel about records and analog in general, cassettes making a comeback?
Well, so I would never engage in the argument of which it sounds better, because you can do a terrible mastering job on vinyl. You can do a terrible mastering job on CD. So, analog and digital are two different things, but vinyl degrades from the first time you play it.
Yeah,
there's a needle that's
dragging across.
Yeah. So eventually it's going to sound worse. And there are some polls that show that like less than 50% of the people who buy vinyl ever play it. So, and that makes sense to me because
it's a collection thing.
It's like
to a consumption
it's
thing.
like a Funko Pop or something. It's like, I like this artist and I want to own something. Mm-hmm. And I'd always been saying, because I used to go to like these Japanese record stores out in LA and San Francisco and stuff, and like the Korean stores, and they had like CDs, but like in these amazing packages.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, like, why don't we make the packaging more elaborate and crazy?
Make it something cool. Yeah.
Right. Because really the big advantage that vinyl has, besides, making albums shorter, which I think like some people really went nuts. It's one thing to tack on some extra tracks. It's another thing to record a 70-minute album. That might be just a little too self-indulgent. But the big artwork, that's a huge part of the appeal of records.
Yep.
And so, my prediction is now that vinyl is getting to be $40, that, they might start doing CDs again, because you can still get a CD made for very little.
Pennies on the dollar compared.
And they've watched the whole K-pop phenomenon happen. All that stuff was in really elaborate packages, but it was CDs.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to see them even if they just stuck it in a 12 by 12 package.
I like that we're doing the 70-minute album of Citizen Salem episodes here. This is our double album.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, I'm enjoying it. Hopefully somebody else is. So Rykodisc went away early 2000s out of Beverly. What have you been doing since then? How do people know you now other than as Jeff the Ryko guy?
So I went to EMI right after.
Okay.
In fact, I found out that Rykodisc was being sold like in the airport lounge before I boarded a flight to London. My boss said to me, "We're selling the company, and I'm going to EMI, and I want you to come with me. And I'll see you in England," because he was sitting like 4 rows away from me.
Funny.
So I spent that whole flight in an existential crisis.
Yeah.
But we went to EMI. The week we got there, the guy who hired us got fired.
Of course.
And all the plans that we had got shoved out the door. Then they sold it to somebody. It was like the worst 18 months of just, getting beat up.
Yeah. Dragged around.
Which, was fine. But on the last day that I was there, these guys who I'd made friends with in the business affairs department called, and they said, there's a lawsuit involving David Bowie, and the law firm reached out to us, and they're looking for an expert witness, and we think you'd be great for it. And I'm like, guys, I don't know anything about this stuff, and they're like, no, you should call him.
Yeah.
at least call them. It pays well. So, and I did call them, and it turned out to be a really great experience. And it's funny because I never graduated art school, never mind any kind of business school or music school, but the amount of experience that I'd had over the years,
lived experience.
Yeah, was pretty valuable, and I know a lot of stuff. And anyway, after that, I was like, well, will I ever do this again? And then a couple of people approached me to do it, and then the smartest $12 I ever spent was buying a musicexpertwitness.com. and so now I do a lot of that. But I'm also writing a lot. I had a comic series published by Image, which is like the third biggest comic publisher, Walking Dead, Invincible, all that stuff. I'm going to be doing more of that for sure.
Cool.
And then I've been working on a book about Rykodisc for way too long. This is going to be like the 10th year that I've been
It's kind of
working
how
on.
writing goes, doesn't it?
It is. Well, yeah, I just thought it was one of those things that I was going to dash out. And it was funny because, it wasn't funny. It was like 2016, bad year for like people, amazing people dying because Bowie died in January.
Petty, Prince.
Prince went in April. Muhammad Ali went that year. Sharon Jones went. Like it was a bad year. And when Bowie went, I was like, nobody remembers that Bowie's label was in Salem.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Cinema Salem and I said, how about we do something? And they were like, great, let's do it in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And it was, I wrote this big long thing. I didn't even have time to do a run through. Like I had a band playing and, ended up being the backbone of the book. And I thought, I'll just be able to flesh this out and be done. And, no, I've done,
10 years of paint later.
Yeah. Over 100 interviews and, just finding digging up all this old stuff. And, it's been a long haul, but I have made a guarantee to the world and myself that this year, at least it will go on sale. So,
okay. Do you have a title yet? Working title?
Well, so it started out, this was shorthand, which was just Ryko Book instead of Ryko Disc.
Yep.
I was originally going to call it Big Enough to Matter, Small Enough to Care, which was one of the label's slogans that Don came up with. And I always thought that's great. That was appropriate because we always considered it a mid-sized record company.
Yeah.
Even though it eventually became, like, for a while anyway, the biggest independent record company in the United States.
Wow.
So I don't know what the ultimate title's going to be.
Yeah. What are you doing to make Salem a better place?
Well, people probably hate me for saying this, but I kind of, part of the whole book thing, as I said, the inspiration was people don't remember that Bowie's record company was here.
Yeah.
And, Morphine's record company and
Zappa
Sugar's record company and
Sugar.
all
Oh, yeah, Sugar. Yeah.
all this stuff. So I wanted to try to remind people about that. And one of the things I want to do around the time of the book is, which will only bring in more tourists, which is why I said people will probably hate me. We used to do like this summer retreat thing called Ryko Fest, where we'd all go to like New Hampshire or Wisconsin or something and just hang out. And what I'd like to do is get a bunch of the Ryko bands to come and play in Salem around the time that the book comes out. So
that'd be rad.
Yeah. I've done some exploratory stuff on it. It's complicated, but, we'll see if we can do it.
Yeah. Well, especially with Sugar back out on the road.
Yeah, I was really hoping I would get the acoustic Sugar reunion before before they did the full on thing, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But it would be just like a 3 or 4 day music festival.
Yeah, still cool though. That's not nothing.
Yeah, it could be something I could lose my shirt and house over, but we'll see.
Well, hopefully not that compact disc shirt. So you came in. You had the Prince hoodie on, and the compact disc T-shirt underneath, and we've covered both in one conversation. So
yeah, I am what I am.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem.
That was great.
Good.